welcome to our live demo cast today. The topic is EOS Studio in Collibra, and it's subtitled Supporting Advanced Data Governance and Modeling. And what we're really going to look at there is how it's very important to be able to use a tool like EOS Studio alongside tools like Collibra to really give you the ability to not just catalog and share and manage things from a business asset perspective, but also to be able to work effectively with a detailed data model as well. This is just a very simple PowerPoint. It's a little bit small, but don't worry about the detail in there. But here, what we're really saying is that, as mentioned, on the right-hand side, IDEA and EOS Studio are really very good at this logical physical modeling, documenting our data assets, also designing them. It's not just about documentation. We can design them, we can build them, we can forward engineer to create new schemas, new data assets and different platforms. We're very, very good at that. And what EOS Studio, so what Collibra also then says, well, actually, I'm very good at having a company-wide glossary or company-wide catalog, whatever you might want to call it, around my business terms. So the business or anyone in the organization can really start searching, start looking how we define these things and how they work. So in terms of the integration layer, what we're able to do, and I'll show this in a demonstration in just a moment, is to be able to synchronize between Collibra and EOS Studio around the business term layer. So we can have these defined. And we may decide to have Collibra, if you like, as our master controlling system for this, where we're using the approval workflows, we're managing all of that, and then delivering that to EOS Studio so that we can then hook it up to things like the data models. And then what we can also do from the EOS Studio side of things is publish the particular models that we select into the Collibra interface. Now, we'll show you this very shortly. Yes, we can deliver those logical models into Collibra. Yes, you can view them, but it doesn't do a great job of making it easy to navigate, make it easy to understand, and so on. So we'll see how having this combination together is really going to help us to work with those more effectively. So I'm going to start here by, I've literally just logged into Collibra. So this might look quite familiar to some of you. And within Collibra, you have this kind of concept there. You can define different areas or different communities. Not very imaginative, but I've got an area called JH Demo for John Harrison Demo inside our Collibra demo environment. So if you think back to that slide that I just showed you about what we can actually synchronize, I'm just going to explain what we've got here. So in my demo environment, I've got a couple of business glossaries. So you can see those there. We've got something called a company-wide glossary, and we've got a HR glossary. And you can see there the domain type in Collibra is a glossary. I've also got some other information in here and some other assets. I've got a logical data dictionary. This is basically what corresponds to a logical data model inside EOS Studio. And again, I'll bring these up in a bit more detail in just a moment. And we can also actually have a physical data dictionary. So in my case here, in fact, what we'll probably do is we'll probably, talking too much and not clicking around and showing things enough. So it's timing out. Let me just reconnect to that. Okay. We'll probably work with this HR set of objects. We'll use the HR glossary. We've got a logical HR model. And we've actually got two physical models which represent implementations on SQL Server and on Snowflake. So I'm going to first of all drill into my HR glossary inside Collibra. So we'll map in there. So I've now got this big long list of different business terms that are all available to me. What I'm going to do is just start searching for one. And actually, I'm going to pick the one that I've used quite recently. So we've got recently viewed. BT just stands for business term in Collibra. So I'm going to select this employee business term. And it's going to bring up now a definition of what this business term actually is. So got a description or a definition. Okay, that's great. Very simple, very high level. We've then also got some additional information, and I'll explain what all this means in just a moment. But we've got something around business assets. So these are probably related, well, sorry, probably, they are related back to this business term. I know that. This is what we want to capturing inside the business term. We've also got what we call different assets that it's linking to. So an employee in some way is linking through to a department. It's also related to other assets. So again, inside the HR glossary, it's an employee might be linking to things, how we define what a business process is, what a skills matrix is, etc. And then also what we're starting to see here is that we've also linked it to some specific data assets. And here, these are the logical and physical environments that I mentioned earlier. So EMP is actually a table, as it says here, asset type's a table. So that's from a physical data model on SQL Server, a physical data model on Snowflake. And then this one here is an entity, so these are logical definitions. So they're probably corresponding objects. We've got employee at the logical layer, which in some ways linked to EMP table at that layer. We've got a bit more information further down that we'll come back to. But it's all there. We can see the information. It's all nice, and we've got all the Collibra usual capabilities. You know, we kind of got approvals, votes, edits, all the rest of it that we usually do in Collibra. But what I'm going to do here is you'll see that we've got a link here which says open it in Team Server, which is the EOS Studio interface. So I'm going to click through there. So we've now switched the view slightly, and we're looking at that same business term, but we're looking at it being synchronized into EOS Studio now. And it presents it in a little bit of a different way, which I think will help you understand and help you navigate it. Now, they are the same thing. So it's a business term. It's in this glossary. The status is under review. I'll jump back to this page in a moment just to show you that they do match. There's the definition. It's also got some things like it's got could be abbreviated to EMP. It could have an alias or a synonym called staff. So if we just jump back to the Collibra page again, you know, we can just verify. Yeah, there's the definition. It's the same thing. We've got things like the synonyms or aliases and how it links to there, etc., etc. So it's all kind of synchronized, the same business term. And these then correspond as well, those sections within Collibra correspond to what we can display inside EOS Studio also. So I'm just going to pick out a few of these. We're not going to go through all of them today in the demonstration, but one thing that I might want to pick out is, well, what about the business asset itself, employee? If you remember in Collibra, we had a list of other kind of definitions in there. We have the same sort of thing here inside EOS Studio being presented. So there's my employee business term, and it's got children attributes of employee number, employee type. So I'm just navigating here to show that all these things kind of do synchronize. My related business terms, we actually render that in a slightly nicer little diagram. So employee links back to business process, employee skill matrix, employment contract. Again, you might remember some of those that we saw on the Collibra screen as well. Now, one thing I am just going to jump back to here is in the description is you might see something here like personal identifiable information, or PII. Now, I'll explain how this gets done in just a moment, but this is actually a custom characteristic in Collibra, or what we call a custom attribute in the EOS Studio. And if you, again, I'm sorry, I hope I'm not confusing this by jumping backwards and forwards, but there, inside Collibra, personal identifiable information, because it's a Boolean field in Collibra, it gets displayed a little cross for false and a tick for true. And inside EOS Studio, we've got true and false being defined. So the reason I'm just highlighting that one is because we'll see when we get into how this is configured, that these custom fields can be included in the synchronization as well. which is really important and makes it a lot more powerful and a lot more usable in terms of what you can capture. Now, the other things that we can do inside here as well is we've so far just really looked at business terms, which is great. It's all really nice. And actually, one thing I will just show inside Team Server as well with the business terms, we do the diagramming, I'd say, a little bit better than what Collibra does in terms of how it represents things. So I can actually navigate around my business terms. Okay, we're looking at employee. That's actually coming from a hierarchy of person, which then goes into something called party. Maybe I'll jump up to party. So we're now seeing the term defined here. What's a party? It's a person or someone who does some kind of business with us. Let's actually have a look at the child associated with that as well, because employee is just one of them. So we're seeing more of a kind of a hierarchy or an ontology of our business terms in a nice graphical way of working inside your studio. And there's our employee that we were looking at. So I'll just jump back into that one. Now, the thing I was just going to show as well inside Collibra is I mentioned that we can actually expand these out and look at things that are components of the logical and physical data models. So if I just scroll down here to maybe something like my employee data entity, okay, and this again is something this has been synchronized into Collibra from ER Studio. I'm just going to click on employee, bring that up in Collibra. So again, we've got this information. It's all come from our data model, which could actually be reverse engineered from a live data source in ER Studio. And we can see the information in there. I can kind of get a bit of a representation of it. So we could go into, there's my employee. Let's maybe start here, and I think if I explore what we've got, data entities, part of the data model represents those tables. So we're seeing that we've got other tables that are defined behind it, probably coming from two different sources. I think we can also, if we start here, we can explore the current one. We can expand it out a little bit more. But in essence, it's quite difficult to navigate things like an entity with the attribute definitions inside Collibra. It's not a modeling tool, basically. Okay, so this is really where ER Studio comes in to help us work with this side of things more effectively. We can share it, we can synchronize it. Business users can get a quick look at these things, they can search for them, they can bring up definitions, and they can also then link back into ER Studio. And here, if I'm looking back at my business term, because ER Studio knows all about data models, I can say, oh, okay, there's my business term. Now, in fact, here in ER Studio, I'm linking to quite a few different data models from this employee definition. So this is my single employee business term, but we could be implementing different instances of that across different data models and ultimately different systems. But we're working with HR. I'll maybe start expanding that one out. So we're now seeing, okay, there's my logical items, employee, full-time employee. That's what links into here. Let's bring up employee because that's what we're looking at inside Collibra. Okay, again, I've got my definition, got my attributes. And the other nice thing, of course, inside ER Studio is you could say, oh, there's my models that are actually using it. Let's have a look at one of those. So ER Studio will then actually render in HTML the data model to show us the relationships and the links across that. So all these definitions, things like employee, things like skill, we can synchronize all those into Collibra, but obviously we get a much better way of working with them from the ER Studio side of things. Now, how can we populate these things? Well, a few different ways, of course. If we're using Collibra, maybe our business users are responsible for our business term definitions. We're inputting those. Maybe we've got them defined already in various parts of the organization. We're working with it. That's great. What we can find becomes a little bit problematic then is, well, how do we kind of control those or manage those? Because we can suddenly find ourselves with tens of thousands of these business terms without really understanding what they're actually doing. So the ability to link these back into the data model then becomes actually very important. So we can at least verify and say, we've got this business term definition because it's being further defined as a table, perhaps, which is being used in our system where we store information about employees as part of our HR system and how we manage that. The diagrams in your studio, by the way, are all kind of clickable. So I can also double click on the diagram and it will load up the information behind that from my data model. So again, we can kind of navigate our way around the detail that's behind the data models. Now, the other thing I can also do here is if I'm coming from the other direction, or I want in some way to actually be able to generate business term definitions as an outline or a skeleton for my logical data models, EOS Studio allows us to do that as well. So within here, I'm now looking at what I call our model explorer. So this is just kind of the contents of all my different data models. I'm maybe going to one of these ones, like the training model, which is one that we're looking at. We've got our entities and so on. I can also do something called harvest the terms. And here it's going to look at that data model. That's my EOS Studio logical model name. So I've got address with postcode, country, etc. Would you like me to harvest and create a business term that corresponds to these? And if we've got definitions in the logical model, it will pick those up, or I can edit them in, I can change them, I can update them. I can create a brand new glossary with these being contained, or I can add to an existing glossary. And these glossaries would then be synchronized back up into Collibra as well. So we can really synchronize across the environments in a number of different ways and manage that information effectively to give us those common definitions that we're working with. So the other thing I do want to just talk about briefly while we're in here, let's just go here. How do we set this up? How do we control what we're doing with EOS Studio in Collibra? Sorry, excuse me. So this is the admin console for the Collibra integration. I'm just going to pick out one or two of these things. The first thing I'm going to bring up is what we call the property mappings. So we don't have to synchronize everything as the first thing. I can control the specific glossaries that I want to synchronize, and I can also control the properties that are part of those glossaries as well. So here on the left is kind of a set of the Collibra properties that it's read in. And then as we scroll down here, we might see some that are like built-in. So we've got definition in Collibra. Yeah, that's just the definition of business assets. And we're mapping that in your studio to that built-in definition field. And that's just rich text. We've got another one there for additional notes. That PII one, you'll see here on this one, that's actually saying that we're mapping that to a custom property. So again, I just wanted to emphasize that, you know, we're not just linked to out-of-the-box properties that are supplied with your studio or Collibra. We can define these customized properties or customized characteristics in Collibra, and we can still do that synchronization across them. So we can really tailor and customize the system to store what we want to capture, but then also synchronize it. And then the other one I just wanted to bring up here, there's lots of other things we can do, but how do we actually synchronize the models? We basically let it know which models we want to sync. So this is the list of my EOS Studio data models. I've got quite a few stored inside my my EOS Studio repository. Well, if we come down here, this is the one that we were looking at. So it's my HR database. I've got a logical model, and it's telling me that I'm going to synchronize that into my JH demo area on Collibra. So you'll see there I've got a list of all the other ones that are out there in my Collibra environment. And this is our demo environment, so I've got kind of access to pretty much everything that's in there. I'm seeing quite a big list. And I want to synchronize that. It's the logical model, and it's just telling me then when it was last done. There's also the ability to control when this happens. Mine is set to manual, just so it doesn't start updating in the background when we're doing a demo and cause everything to slow down a bit. But you can also have it set to automatic, so that as changes are made in your studio, it will update things into Collibra. Or you can set up a sync to happen on particular times as well. And then the physical models, the same thing, basically synchronizing the objects on my physical models that we saw, the tables and so on coming through. I want to synchronize up those into Collibra also. And then the final thing I do just want to show is in terms of the demonstration. I'm a bit conscious as well. I've been, as always, talking for a long time here. The other thing I want to show as well in here, that if we're actually working with EOS Studio in terms of creating the data models, how does that come about? How does that work? I'm not going to get into the demonstration of the EOS Studio Data Architect tooling anyway. Oh, that's all right. It's just again, let me just quickly check that it's actually showing yet. But this is the modeling tool itself. So this is where we'd actually create data models. This is where we can extract them from existing data sources, read in JSON files and generate a model from it. And if I just bring up one of these, for example, like employee, lots and lots of detail behind it. There's things like my definition, the description that we saw inside the web interfaces and inside Collibra. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that the terms in the business glossaries are also visible in here. So as a data architect, as a technical author of the data models, I can at any point see all of the business term and business glossary definitions. You'll see I can search for things, I can filter them out based on glossary, I can click through them to open them up, or I could add additional ones in there. So I could basically say I want to create a link from my entity called employee, which has a table name called employee. So that's my logical model, my physical model. And it's currently linked to employee business term, but of course I can have multiple links established as well. So we can link all those together within there. Okay, so there's a lot more things we could show you in the demonstration. That's probably what we're going to kind of cover today. Thanks everyone for attending the session today as well, and have a great rest of the day.